Welcome once again to Cinemaholics. I am John Agroni. I wrote a bunch of books, and I write about film for Atom Tickets and the young folks in Cinemaholics. He's back. He's our pop culture writer for Cinema Blend. He also reviews films for The Playlist, Cut Print Film, and of course, Cinemaholics.com. Never forget that. Hey, Will Ashen.
Hey, I'm back.
It's so great to have you back. We're recording this a lot earlier than we normally do, a Thursday night. But you won't hear this until Sunday, of course, but big stuff's happening this weekend. I'm headed to a wedding in Central California, and I know, Will, you always have a busy schedule on the weekend. You're so popular.
Yeah, usually it's because I'm working, but I like to keep that mystique alive, sure.
Mystique, yes. Great reference to the movies we were going to be talking about today. And I was going to say, despite recording so early, we did manage to see a lot of the new releases. Definitely not every single thing coming out this weekend, but most of it. We're going to be talking about Dark Phoenix, as well as Late Night, The Secret Life of Pets 2, and The Souvenir. And hopefully we'll talk about a couple of other things, catching up on things, we should say, because, Will, you were, of course, absent last week, but Sam Noland filled in for you, and he was live right here in the Internet California. It was amazing. Did you feel like you missed out on something?
I guess so, yeah. I never got the in-studio John the Grony experience, so he has one-upped me in that regard. And I suppose he has one-upped me in many other regards as well.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. You guys are wonderful colleagues, and it's not a competition, but yes, he is winning when it comes to recording with me live. But yeah, great to have you back. And I know that you were able to guest on another podcast to talk about Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Well, tell the listeners all about that, because I'm sure they want to listen.
Sure. Ryan Oliver, who was on our Shazam Pet Cemetery episode in April, I believe, he invited me and Julia Tatey, fellow Cinemaholics writer, on his podcast at The Playlist, like I said, to talk about Godzilla, and I got to talk about Ma as well. Two films I believe you guys discussed last week, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, in fact, let's slide into our off topics, because part of our off topics this week is I do want to ask you what you think of those two movies very briefly. But first, got to get this out of the way. Our next extra milestone is coming out later this month. We have to decide what movie we're going to talk about. If you're new, Extra Milestone is a bonus Cinemaholics podcast where we devote a bonus episode of this show talking about a movie celebrating a film anniversary. We call it an extra milestone. And the choices are on our Twitter. It's between Chinatown, Alien, Batman, the 1989 Tim Burton version, and Once Upon a Time in America. So I believe Alien is winning by a massive margin at the moment. So if you don't want to pick Alien, this is your chance. Let us know. The easiest way is to go to the comment section on cinemaholics.com for either this episode or our last episode. Just let us know which you would prefer. And I know we're all pulling for a lot of different ones. I'm still pulling for Chinatown. I know it's not going to win, but my heart still goes to Chinatown. I'm not going to forget it like Jake did.
Sure. I think if I'm pulling for any of them, it might be Once Upon a Time in America, only really because, I mean, for one, it's supposed to be a masterpiece, but the main reason I was thinking was because I wanted to see it before Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So
you still can.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But I mean, if I have an excuse with the podcast to watch a 4-hour movie, it makes more sense, and I can justify that as opposed to just watching in my own time. Though, of course, I don't need an excuse to check out, a masterful film of that regard. But yeah, I mean, Alien, I have seen that one. So if we do that one, that'll be the first one in Extra Milestone history that I have seen before I rewatch it for the podcast. So that'll be fun.
Right. We've all seen Alien, all of us who do Extra Milestones. So if we do that, we'll have to do a little bit of a twist. If that ends up winning, we'll have to maybe bring on a fourth person and have a little bit of fun. But that's Extra Milestone. All of our previous episodes of that are on cinemaholics.com as always. Definitely go check that out. Okay, back to catching up on all the movies. We both have seen so many things these last 2 weeks. It's hard to wrap my head around like all of them put together, but I am curious, Will, what did you think of Godzilla, King of the Monsters? What did you think of Ma? Two movies we talked about last week.
Yeah, well, Godzilla, I had pretty mixed feelings on. I had pretty high expectations until the reviews came out, which were definitely disappointing for me, considering that at one point that was my most anticipated film of the summer. As a film, I can definitely get behind a lot of the criticisms of the film. The characters, it reminded me a lot more of the criticisms of that were lodged against the first movie or the 2014 film, where I just had no real care or interest in the humans of the film. There were too many of them. They overpopulated the thing. I really didn't get a firm sense of why they were doing half the things they did, and if I did, I was more annoyed with them than charmed. I think it's safe to say, even though it's a great cast, I do like, I think, everyone involved as far as the ensemble is concerned. But yeah, unfortunately, in that regard, I was pretty underwhelmed. But the monster fights, seeing them on the IMAX, having a beer in hand and being with my buddy and seeing it with a full crowd, in that regard, I had fun in that respect. And it wasn't enough for me to say it's like a good film or at least like a decent one, but I gave it like a fine C plus. Like, I acknowledge it has a lot of flaws, definitely a pretty underwhelming experience overall, and I definitely dive into a lot of my criticisms on that aforementioned playlist podcast. But I don't know. I think I had kind of warm and cold feelings towards it overall.
Totally. It sounds like you're about in line with where Sam Nolan and I were at. I think Sam was a slightly more positive on it, just because he spent all of those months, all that time leading up to seeing those films, all of the Godzilla films, and I do think King of the Monsters has a few rewarding moments for Godzilla fans that are a bit more alienating to fans like me who haven't seen every single one. But all right, so that's Godzilla King of the Monsters. What about Ma? I know this one was a weird one for Sam and I because we had mixed feelings about it, but I know some people really like Ma. They don't want to let Ma drink alone, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't let Ma drink alone, and I should stress I don't often drink during movies, but last week was a bit exception because it was my birthday weekend. So for at least 3 films we're going to be talking about, I was drinking while watching them. But that's, to be clear, just to keep my credentials as a critic intact. I don't do that all the time. But I did during Ma, and I did during Godzilla. And Ma is an interesting film in that I would say it's a bad film as far as what it sets out to do. The script is pretty bad. There's a lot of problematic elements as far as what it does or what it tries to do. But as a showcase for Octavia Spencer to kind of go Bette Davis wild in a performance that really caters to her talents in a way that allows her to show why she is such a great actress and also kind of expand in different ways that we haven't seen from her before. I thought it was rewarding in that regard, and I think she totally knew what movie she was in, and I think she fully embraced it. And I think unlike a movie like Greta earlier this year, where I think that movie didn't really feel comfortable owning up to its campy elements until like the last 15-20 minutes, this movie, it is a little touch and go in that regard. There's definitely a lot of serious content that can be a bit jarring, and I think there's a lot of conversations the movies want to have that it's not willing to have, at least to a full extent. But I think for the last half of it, when it really just goes nuts and wild in a fun, campy sort of way, I was having a lot of fun with it. So another one, I think I gave it a C+ overall, but that one, again, had some fun times while I was watching the theater.
Yeah, weirdly enough, I can't tell which I would rather watch again, Greta or Ma.
Well, Ma's shorter.
I think, yeah, it's true. I think Ma, maybe, because Greta, once you know every little thing that's going to happen, I wonder if the effect is going to be as strong with that movie. It does have a few wacky moments, but you can just watch those as YouTube clips. Whereas Ma, and we talked about this in the review last week, that was kind of like a slow buildup that I kind of enjoyed, of like getting to know this character and her backstory. It didn't really go anywhere. I thought that was all that interesting, but there are a few moments in Ma that I think make it a bit worth it, and you're right, it is pretty short. But okay, so those are a lot of the things. I think there's another thing that you saw that we kind of hesitated to even bring this movie up on the show, but it's on Amazon
Booksmart?
Prime.
Oh, no.
I forgot about Booksmart. You haven't really talked about Booksmart on this show yet.
No, I haven't. No, I saw Booksmart. Yeah, I liked it. I don't know what I can say about it that hasn't been said before by you and everyone on Twitter and in the critic stratosphere, but yeah, it's quite a good film, and I'm definitely excited to see where Olivia Wilde goes next as a filmmaker.
Was there anything you thought about watching the film or afterward where you're like, hey, nobody's made this point yet, or are you saying like you just feel like, yeah, you've heard it all?
a bit of a spoiler, but I'm kind of surprised people aren't really bringing up the Jessica Williams thing more. And that's like a whole can of worms. So
sure.
I don't really want to
I've heard a little bit of it, yeah.
But I'm a little surprised. Like, I mean, it doesn't kill the movie necessarily, but I thought it was a whole subplot that was kind of icky, and I really didn't see the point in having in the film. And I think it's a thing that should have been probably talked about more from a critical standpoint. And like I said, again, it doesn't, wreck the movie or like really take away too much of my enjoyment of it. But I do think it's kind of an odd thing to overlook, especially because, like I said, it really doesn't add or improve the film in any way that I can recall or remember. Like, I mean, it just was kind of thrown in there kind of haphazardly. But yeah, that's the only thing I've seen from a critical standpoint that weirdly hasn't really been addressed as far as I can tell.
I think it leads to a kind of a funny joke, but we'll let that rest because we don't want to spoil it.
Like, again, it's cool can of worms. It's a whole can of worms, so I don't really want to.
Molly Gordon just gets to say something very funny regarding to that and the timing of it. Maybe that's what made me forgive some of the ickiness that you're referring to. But there is another movie that I think is nothing but problems from what I've heard. Tell us about it. Yeah.
Oh, man. So I bit the bullet and I decided, since it's on Amazon Prime, like you said, I'm going to watch, or I did decide to watch Loqueesha, Jeremy Seville's very controversial sophomore film.
I can't believe you saw this.
Well, here's the thing. I knew I would never pay to see it. Like, I would never go out of my way to see this film because why would I?
For listeners who don't know, it's a very troubling film that it's an independent film that kind of weaseled its way into a film festival, got removed, and all of this crazy stuff. Now it's on Amazon. Yeah,
well, the premise is it's a white man who pretends to be a black woman to get a radio show to pay for his son's schooling. That's the one sentence synopsis of the film.
What an elevator pitch.
Sure. I mean, the film was, as you said, made independently, so I guess he funded it himself. It's a very big mystery as far as why this movie exists at all, let alone in 2019. Again, it's baffling for many different reasons. But I mean, like I said earlier, birthday weekend, I was pretty half in the bag at one point, and I decided I would press play because it wouldn't cost me any money to watch Loqueesha. And like you said, I really didn't want to spend too much time on this because I don't want to promote it necessarily, because I don't think it's really a movie that should be celebrated in any particular way. I don't think Jeremy Seville should be given any credit for making this movie or going out of his way to do what he did here. But it's a movie. It's just a really fascinating failure of a comedy, and it's one of those films that it kind of just makes you really think about the nature of comedy itself. Because I've heard, I guess some people were likening this film to something like Sorry to Bother You, or I guess White Chicks was the film that was
like a reverse Sorry to Bother You, but honestly, you make it sound like movie 43.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it just with Sorry to Bother You, I mean, that's a premise that, sure, I mean, the wrong hands, or if someone wasn't thoughtful or considerate about that premise, that could have been a huge disaster. And I think in 90, Doctor Strange scenarios, 99% of the time, that could have not worked out in Boot Riley's favor. But
yeah, there's 14 million versions that wouldn't have worked. And
right.
The one way, there's only one.
Right. And I mean, at least for me, Sorry to Bother You was a good film. I know you didn't really care for it, John, for your own reasons, which I respect. I mean, it is kind of another controversial film, and it can be pretty polarizing in certain respects.
Yeah, I respect it. It's not a film that I look down on or anything like that.
Sure, but that's a film, I think it's safe to say, whether you like the film or not, that Boots Riley, he was thoughtful about the premise. He was creative about it. He recognized what could have easily been wrong about it, and he went out of his way to avoid a lot of the pratfalls that could have easily have made that film not work. With Loqueesha, I don't know a scenario where this film could have worked, but I will say that the premise and the execution of it here is, if not as bad as it could have been, certainly one of the worst ways it could have gone about it. And I think a lot of that comes down to Jeremy Seville just being completely tone deaf and clueless about what this story is, the consequences of what that means, and as far as appropriating a culture and, I mean, using this affectation to better himself. I mean, obviously that's a whole discussion that has been made. And I think the movie goes out of its way twice to address the problematic nature of that premise. But the first time it does it, and also it's brought up by two women of color. The first time it happens, the character reveals herself to be the villain of the film. And the second time, the characters end up making out. So I don't know how much more I can really get into this film without like going into a full thesis, but whatever you've really heard, if you have heard about the film, whatever you've heard about it, in many respects, it is even worse than you could imagine. And I don't know if I would say anyone should seek it out. It is on Amazon Prime if you feel some weird inclination to see it. But having, gone through the process of watching it, it took me a while because I did not sit and watch in one viewing. I had to get up several times for not only to refill my drink, but to just process, I guess, what is happening at many different points of the film.
Yeah, bathroom breaks. You know how it is.
Yeah. It's, like I said, it's fascinating, and I could go all night talking about how much of a fascinating failure it is and how it kind of proves that comedy is a very delicate balance and that it's not a proven science, but there are many, many ways that you can go wrong with it, and many ways you can fail to make your point, and in many ways, like, or prove the, like, what you're trying not to prove, I guess. But, yeah, it's I don't know anymore, John. It in many ways, it kind of broke me. But
sounds like it.
Yeah, it's something, John. I don't know, man.
I had no idea you were going to talk about it for this long, even, but I clearly had an effect.
I told you I could talk about this movie all night, but I'd rather not, because I can see full conversations about this. I'm like, I have to stop myself. This is going to be a full thing, and we have to talk about X-Men Dark Phoenix.
We have a lot to get to. Yeah.
I have a lot to say about that.
Did you have a grade for it though?
I don't even know. Should I dignify it with a grading?
You're right. Yeah, that would just not be right. An F it is.
Yeah, I'd say like a D or D minus, just because the other cast members in the crew, I feel bad for them. Like I genuinely really feel bad, honestly, for everyone else besides Jerry Seville who is involved with this film. And it's one of those films that, honestly, I don't know how to like say this, but like there have been times where I'm like, oh, like being an actor it must be pretty fun. You get to like, go to all these locations, see the world, be another person, kind of live in someone else's shoes, learn to be empathetic in this ways. And then you like see a movie like Loqueesha where like actors have to like say these horrible, awful things and dignify this man's crazed, smug ego for this weird vanity project that makes like no sense but him and his mind. And I'm like, 85% of the time it must be really bad to be an actor. Yeah. And it made me very cynical about the acting business. I feel really bad because I love actors. I mean, they make the movies, but a movie like Loqueesha is like, it's a tough business out there, and I feel for people like that who have to suffer through. I mean, I'm sure they got paid for it, but even still, I mean, their dignity is on the line, their credibility maybe even. But I don't know.
So it sounds like to me, you give this movie a PD because you PD.
Yes,
actors?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I get you now. It took me a second, but yes, that's a
I had to explain it, so it wasn't good. Yeah. All right. Well, glad for the catch up. I know that went a little longer than normal, but that's just what happens when we miss you for a week. But glad we could get back up to speed. There are a couple of things. I'll just briefly go over them here because we don't have any time, but we do have to move on. I did see Chernobyl, all 5 episodes. That's a new HBO series. It was written and executive produced by Craig Mazin, who a lot of people, if they know him, they might know him from his Script Notes podcast, a podcast for screenwriters, which is excellent. I've been listening to it for years. But he was also the screenwriter of Identity Thief, both of the Hangover sequels, and a whole bunch of other things like Scary Movie 3 that aren't exactly impressive. They're all kind of comedies. He's the kind of screenwriter who's sort of known for coming in and saving movies, but not really getting credited to them. And he doesn't have like a reputation for like prestige, I guess. Mm-hmm. But with Chernobyl, well, I know you haven't caught this yet, but I know you've been hearing great things about it. They're all deserved. This show This show is fantastic. It is.
I've heard.
It's dark, it's bleak, it's addicting, and it's a pretty terrific miniseries covering the true events of the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. And if you don't know much about Chernobyl, or if you think you do know anything about Chernobyl, this is your chance to get into this show. It just finished airing all 5 episodes. I watched all of them in a row, basically, until right before the 5th one premiered, and then I saw that. And not only that, but when I would watch the episodes, I'd listen to the Chernobyl podcast, where Craig Mazin is actually on a podcast talking about making the show. It's sort of like a director's commentary, but in podcast form. And I loved it. I was addicted. I would just watch an episode, listen to the podcast, watch an episode. It was very insightful. It was very informative. It was a great way to process some of the really dark stuff I was watching. So Chernobyl's really good. Like, I just can't believe how good it is. And Jared Harris is in this with Emily Watson and on Skarsgård, and they're just like, it's so rare to watch a show in general with this level of directing and writing and acting that is just in sync, has a clear vision. You can tell that Craig Mazin loves this material and wants you to like understand the scope of what happened. And it makes you think. It's very deep. There's a lot to it. And I hope you get a kick out of it when you get around to seeing it, Will.
Yeah.
Hopefully this won't be a Game of Thrones situation.
I guess not. Yeah. It's always nice to see a passion project that's actually thoughtful, considerate, well constructed. But I guess instead of watching that, I watched Loqueesha, but I will rectify that.
That's surprising to hear, to be honest, but yeah.
As soon as possible, yeah. I hope that's the one and only time Chernobyl and Loqueesha are compared.
As far as, there are a couple of Netflix things I saw really quickly. I saw Then Came You. I premiered last October at Woodstock and the film festival, not the 70s music concert. Then Came You. It's Maisie Williams and Asa Butterfield and Nina Dobrev and Titus Burgess. It's just kind of a disposable. It's like if Fault in Our Stars meets Muriel and the Dying Girl, I guess. It's just kind of like a sort of a friendship dramedy indie sort of thing. Didn't really like it much. I know some people kind of really dig it, but that's just like a quick little. If you want to see something, you already watched Always Be My Maybe, which I really enjoyed. Then this is I guess your rom-com for the weekend. And it makes me a little sad because we're talking about Dark Phoenix soon and thinking about Maisie Williams and Sophie Turner and their movie careers, right? It's just that's a bit of a can of worms, and I really like both actors, and I don't know. I want them to be in really great things after Game of Thrones, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Maisie Williams, she's going to be New Mutants, assuming that movie ever comes out. So I guess they both kind of got roped into this X-Men series for the worst, it seems, assuming that New Mutants doesn't turn out well. Who knows? Maybe it's a masterpiece, but if we ever see it, we'll find out.
New Mutants was supposed to come out last February. Not February 2019, February 2018.
2018, yeah.
And it was delayed to this summer and then delayed to next March, I think. So that's not looking good. But something I do want to bring up, another Netflix release that I do think you all should see when you can, is called When They See Us. This is Ava DuVernay's project that one of the first of, I think, a few things she's doing with Netflix. And this is another miniseries like Chernobyl. It's a 4-parter about the Central Park 5. It concerns the Central Park jogger case in the late 1980s. I think it was 1989, wherein these 5, because that's in the name, but it's 4 young children of color. They're teenagers of color. I'm messing up the ethnicity, so I want to make sure I get it right. So 4 of them are African American. 1 of them is Puerto Rican. And all 5 of them are wrongfully suspected of raping this 28-year-old woman in Central Park. And the show documents what happened, and not documents in like a documentary sort of way, but it's a narrative, and you sort of see it play out. This is a very yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's biographical, and this miniseries, I won't go into too much detail, but like Chernobyl, it's pretty bleak. It's not the most thoroughly uplifting sort of thing. Although just, work your way to the end and you'll see what happens with it. I personally didn't know much about these people, these men, and then at the time they were boys. I didn't know much about this case beyond a few cliff notes, and I think this is essential viewing, just as a sort of like, you should know this story. Like, people should know what happened here, because it's like a civic duty sort of thing to know this sort of thing can happen to people, this sort of like injustice, this sort of thing that like to today, like some of the people responsible for destroying these young boys' lives out of just horrible, horrible circumstances are, until like this miniseries came out, the lead, not the lead prosecutor, but basically the person who masterminded their incarceration. She was like a successful crime novelist, that like the head of like this college board of trustees and all of these accolades. Ava DuVernay makes this miniseries, and people finally are like, oh my gosh. And this woman, so basically you should see this just to get like an inkling of what happened. Of course, do your research, look into the real stories. I did a lot of research to see like, was this really accurate? Is this really how things went down? And it is very close to the truth, just dramatized in the same way Chernobyl is. So I absolutely recommend When They See Us. It's a show that had a really profound effect on me. I had a bit of a just emotional tornado hit me when I watched, especially episode 4. Episode 4 of When They See Us is just one of the toughest episodes of anything I've ever had to watch before. Yet I think people should see it because it's beautiful in its own sort of way. There are a lot of moments here where I feel like, because this is DuVernay, you know that she's coming from a place, kind of what you were talking about with Boots Riley earlier, where this so easily could have just felt like another Detroit, right? Where it just feels like it's just throwing black pain at you to sort of provoke a reaction. And that's not this. Like this is so human. This is as tender as it is unrelenting. And I don't know the words that really wrap in everything I feel, because there's just something about seeing, I don't usually see Puerto Ricans on the big screen. Like, we have Puerto Rican actors, like we have Puerto Ricans who look kind of white-ish, you can't really tell, or if they are Puerto Rican, they're cast as like a Mexican character, a Peruvian character. And I don't think anything is wrong with that, but it's just so rare that we see Puerto Ricans, like you don't see the Puerto Rican flag on a screen very often. And that means a lot to me as a Puerto Rican to just see somebody's story. And in a lot of ways, I felt like I was looking at real people that I know, and I'm not used to that experience. I think a lot of people, maybe even listening, maybe they're used to that. I think, Will, maybe you're used to sort of seeing people who kind of like reflect your experiences in a more direct way, like a more cultural way. And so me seeing that had a bit of effect on me, mainly episode 3, I should say, not episode 4. But I hope you get around to seeing this one as well, Will. I know that you're a fan of Ava DuVernay. I know neither of us really cared for A Wrinkle in Time, but I mean, she has made some, right. But I mean, other things she's done. I mean, 13th and Selma. I mean, she's obviously one of the most talented filmmakers working today. So I know that you'll probably appreciate this one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it seems like essential viewing. But as I was telling you, I think off the air, I mean, I just have to kind of work myself up to it. Like, it's not something I can just put on, and, I have to kind of get myself there, I guess, mentally, because I know it's going to be a tough sit, but I do plan to check it out.
All right. So we've gone through a lot of stuff here. This has been sort of like a mini review section by accident, not our plan, but that's what happens. Real quick, before we move on, let's complain about not being invited to Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland. I think we should do that for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, and, I've been busting my ass as a Star Wars fan for years.
It's so hard being a Star Wars fan. Well, I don't know.
Can I just talk, not even just a clip, that line. I love that line because it's so beautifully unself-aware.
And I feel so bad for the listeners who do not know what we're talking about, and I envy them.
I mean, if you Google that line, I think you'll find it at this point, at least. I think that line, though, just in the grand scheme of things, obviously the whole clip is pretty amazing for a variety of reasons, but that clip is like Will Ferrell wishes he wrote that. The Lonely Island wishes they could come up with like that level of like
I'm just imagining Will
man
Ferrell
child
saying it now, yeah.
like you can hear it, right? That totally sounds like a like Step Brothers Will Ferrell like line him or John C. Reilly would say like in a comedy or like I don't know, like I said, Lonely Island, maybe I could see them doing something like that. It's just so beautifully unself-aware. Like I couldn't, like someone Andrew Woods, a guy I follow on Twitter, like he like said something along the same lines, like he had like an existential crisis because he could never come up with something 1/16th as funny as that line intentionally, like in an ironic fashion. And he just blurts it out, and it's amazing.
All right, well, again, you can Google that. That's just a little bit of fun we got to have at the expense of just a person who, God help him. Okay, so last thing for off topics, we have just a couple of comments to get to. We're recording this pretty early, so there are not that many comments. And again, last week we talked about Rocket Man, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Ma, Last Black Man in San Francisco, and Always Be My Maybe. And speaking of Last Black Man in San Francisco, talked about it last week. It is out in limited release right now, so it's my favorite film of the year. So I think if it's in your area, you should definitely go check it out. You were saying?
Yeah, I see that Wednesday.
Oh, can't wait to hear what you think.
Yeah.
But okay. Daniel A. said, missed hearing Will Ashton. Would love to hear his take on Rocket Man. But this was a wonderful episode of Cinemaholics. I've listened to almost every episode since you all started, but this was easily in my top 5 favorites. Back and forth between you and Sam was hilarious. Plus, you both went so deep into each film. I don't normally comment, but I had to after finishing this episode on my commute. Keep up the good work, guys. Thanks, Daniel. I really appreciate the compliment. And, you know, I think Sam and I were a little nervous. We were not sure how our back and forth would play, honestly, because we were having a little bit too much fun in certain parts. But yes, we missed Will Ashton as well. And Will, I don't think you saw Rocket Man yet.
No, I might see it this weekend. I'm trying to figure that out now. I almost saw it over the previous weekend, but it didn't work out. But I am planning to see it as soon as I can.
All right. Yeah. Jancy only had one thing to say. That intro had me dying. And that only makes sense if you heard that intro. Will, did you listen to the episode? I don't know if you did.
I haven't had a chance to, no.
Okay, good. You have no idea what that's about.
Sure.
You'll have to get back to me because it has to do with you. The suspense is real. And then last we have username, want to watch a film tonight? My answer to your username is yes. Want to watch a film tonight? Said absolutely loved Rocket Man. Music was well done. You can tell Edgerton did his homework. I was thoroughly amazed with how good this was. Yeah, a lot of positive stuff coming out for Rocket Man. I'm glad to hear it because I really enjoyed that film, and I think most people are coming out, you know, mostly positive, some mixed here and there, but people like that movie.
Was Rocket Man the main review last week?
Yeah, it was the one we started with because we recorded right after watching it, so it didn't feel right to talk about Godzilla first because that film was just right on our heads, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know I'd have to answer to you about it. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
Producer Will Ashton. Okay.
Yeah. I'm a producer?
Well, we'll talk about it after the show. Let's see how the rest of this goes. We're already a half hour in. We're kind of...
Oh, I thought you were going to quote the Christian Harloff thing again.
Sorry, that whole clip is now playing in my head.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were the head of development. Well, now I do. Oh boy. All right. We need to stop punching up. Okay.
Punching up.
Well, yeah, because
that's true.
They're
he
a way
is,
bigger show than we are. So
right. Yeah. No. So I don't feel guilty, I guess, as I should.
Right. If we were bigger than them, it'd be a little disgraceful, probably. But, all right. Our first movie this week is Dark Phoenix, and Dark Phoenix is in some ways the final chapter of a very, very long book. It's been 19 years in the making. It all began in the year 2000 when we saw the release of the very simply titled X-Men. I like how simple that movie title is. 2 words, not even 2 words. It's like a letter and a word. I love it.
Quaint.
And from there, so X-Men comes out in 2000, and it wasn't like the first big hit of a superhero movie. I mean, you could really say Blade was what brought that in. You know, we're talking about like the post Batman and Robin era. But X-Men kind of box office wise, it really just sort of like blew the doors open of the superhero movie era we are still in almost 20 years later. And from that year, this franchise, I mean, this movie, it mutated and it evolved into a trilogy and then a franchise with origin trilogies.
See what you did there.
Then it was rebooted and then a franchise rebooted from that reboot. And then all the while, you have all these Deadpool and Wolverine spinoffs coming here and there. We already talked about that New Mutants film that got delayed to next year that nobody really seems to care that much about, because I guess expectations are pretty low. So even though Dark Phoenix isn't the last of this like interconnected saga to come out, it does feel like the last one. Like it feels like the last stand, I guess. So, well, in more ways than one.
It's kind of like their end game, I guess, in a way.
Is it? I feel like their end game was Days of Future Past, which I guess, yeah. I maintain that is the film that should have ended everything. You know, Logan can still come out, but in terms of like the First Class, you know, sort of movies, they should have just ended it at Days of Future Past because it was so good. Just end on that high note, right? But they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best they could have hoped for outside of Logan, but oh well.
Yeah, right. And Logan was nice because it was just an offshoot. It wasn't, you know, it was wrapping up a different trilogy entirely. Right. But regardless, so I put this in my review, but I think we can simplify the timelines here by saying, okay, Dark Phoenix, it's the fourth film in the First Class franchise. So First Class, that was the X-Men film. It took place in the 1960s. It introduced us to younger versions of Charles Xavier, played by James McAvoy, Magneto, played by Michael Fassbender, Mystique, played by Jennifer Lawrence, and Beast, played by Nicholas Hoult. Many others, but those are the ones that have lasted through the next three movies. And we followed them into, like, each movie is its own decade. Now we're in the 1990s, and we have like a functioning X-Men team. They sort of built themselves together in Apocalypse, but now they're like doing missions. They're actually a team, like they work. But before we move on, I mean, Apocalypse, that was an X-Men movie that I liked. I thought that was enjoyable, disposable for sure, but I thought it could have been much worse than I think some people were playing at. But I forget. Were you a fan of Apocalypse, Will?
I mean, I enjoyed it, sure. I mean, I think that movie, while not necessarily good, I think it's enjoyable in a fun, campy sort of way.
Sure.
I think it's a lot goofier and sillier than another movie we're going to discuss. And I think that movie at least kind of relishes being bad in a certain way that made the experience way more enjoyable than the Dark Phoenix experience. But yeah, with an asterisk, I guess I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked its heightened sense of reality, I guess, and I kind of liked the way that it ended itself around the team coming together. So I was looking forward to Dark Phoenix because I was like, okay, here's where we see the 90s version of the X-Men. You can follow sort of the cartoon and everything like that. Weirdly enough, they all still have matching costumes like they do in First Class, which I don't really understand that decision. I felt like they should have their 90s costumes or something that's a little bit more bright and colorful, but I mean, it's the 90s, right? But they don't do that. So our X-Men include Ty Sheridan as Cyclops, Alexander Shipp as Storm, Evan Peters as Quicksilver, and Cody Smith-McPhee as Nightcrawler. Oh, and of course, Sophie Turner as Jean Grey, the titular Phoenix who goes dark mode on us.
It's the title role.
Yeah. The film opens with the X-Men on a mission to save a group of astronauts, and Jean Grey, she almost dies before she absorbs a solar flare, which doesn't really make sense unless you know the comic storyline that has like a backstory to it. But in the movie, it's just energy stuff, and it doesn't kill her. It actually boosts her powers inexplicably to the point where she uncovers a hidden trauma from her past and puts her on a dark and stormy path toward realizing who she is outside of the X-Men and Charles Xavier's egomaniac influence. Along the way, we also have these shape-shifting aliens. For some reason, they're led by Jessica Chastain. And it seems to be a nod to the Skrulls, but then Captain Marvel happened. And it's weird because there is like an alien race more tied directly to Dark Phoenix. It's not the Skrulls at all. but they don't use them. They use this other one. I forget what they're called. It like starts with a D or something. I don't know too much about like the X-Men lore, but I do know the Dark Phoenix storyline, and it is kind of weird, some of the decisions they made with that. Regardless, we do have a clip in this scene. Jean Grey is now the Dark Phoenix, and Jessica Chastain's villainous character has found her alone and has decided to impart some of her wisdom.
Who are you?
The better question is, who are you? Are you a scared little girl who answers to a man in a chair? Or are you the most powerful creature on the planet?
I don't know who I am.
Yes, you do. You're the girl who everyone abandons.
Maybe they had good reason.
Because what's inside you? You're afraid of it because you think it makes you bad, evil. All the words you've been taught to keep you in line. Words created a very long time ago by men with very little minds. They can't begin to comprehend what you are. Even your X-Men.
You can.
All right, that is a clip from Dark Phoenix, not X-Men Dark Phoenix, just Dark Phoenix with the X circled around it. All right, Will, I want to hear your thoughts on Dark Phoenix, but specifically, I want to know what you think of these X-Men movies, not all the spin-offs, but the X-Men ones, right? And whether or not they kind of influence you walking into this movie.
Oh, man. Sorry, I was dozing off from that clip. Oh, man.
Yeah, I checked out at several parts during this movie as well.
Oh, man. Yeah, so to answer your question, we kind of addressed it already, but the X-Men movies, they're very turbulent in terms of quality and I guess many other ways. I haven't seen a lot of them in a while, so my recollections of them are kind of faint. They're based on my teenage experience, so they can obviously be taken with a lot of grains of salt. But I remember liking the first one, the 2001 you mentioned. I did quite enjoy X2. Last Stand, I think kind of similar to Apocalypse. I think there's fun stuff in it. I think there's moments I enjoy, but I do see why people are pretty critical of it. I'm not quite as negative on the film. I don't think it's the worst X-Men movie, at least as far as I can recall, but it's not the best by any stretch of the imagination. It's easily in the bottom 5. I think I've enjoyed most of them. I quite liked First Class. Days of Future Past, I think, is easily a top tier one. Logan as well. I even enjoy the Deadpool movies, if to an extent. Yeah, I mean, I think basically all of them I've liked except for X-Men Origins Wolverine, which, even though that movie is pretty egregiously bad, that also has some fun kind of campy moments that I tend to enjoy. And I think that's what I tend to like about the X-Men movies, that they often embrace that cartoonishness that I tend to get a kick out of with comic book movies. And they have a kind of goofy silliness that is far from consistent. But there is something about them that you can appreciate, at least to a certain extent, while watching them. But with Dark Phoenix, man, this one, I hated it. I really, really did not like this movie at all. And I think some people are giving it a pass because it's like, oh, it's not the worst. It's focused in some ways compared to the other one. It's not like as like bombastically bad or over the top as like Apocalypse or Last Stand or X-Men Origins Wolverine. But to me, it's just dull. Like, it is clearly the work of I think you've said this already, but it's clearly Simon Kinberg's directorial debut, because Kinberg has been involved, I believe, since Last Stand as a producer and writer on various different X-Men movies. And this is very obviously a film directed, a $150 million plus movie directed by a producer, in that
I think it cost $200 million
with all the set piece, or with the reshoots and all that. Yeah. But you can tell because there's clearly all these sets, all these locations, all these like setups all these different things that a traditional blockbuster has. But the way that the film is constructed, there's no flow, there's no rhythm between scenes, there's no creativity, the style is not there. The interactions fall flat, the performances are very, very checked out. There's nothing really that suggests that a filmmaker is really influencing what's happening here. It feels like a producer that's basically getting the movie through as best as possible to its release date. And to me, that is the worst type of blockbuster. A film that just, I think we've mentioned on before, I tend to like filmmaker influence, even when they have some bombast that might overshadow a story. At least it's something. At least it's something that makes me relish this thematic or cinema experience in a way that, it makes me appreciate what's going on as far as the craft of filmmaking. This just feels like it is trying to be efficient more than effective. It feels like it's just chugging along, trying to make it to cinemas after many delays, many reshoots, many points, and nobody involved with this movie feels like they want to be there. Everyone feels like they're contractually obligated to be there. Nobody seems like they're having fun. Nobody seems like they're really getting much out of this experience. It's just this kind of somber movie, bland movie that has this meandering, overblown quality that just bored me to pieces. I mean, we have all these talented actors in here who are just not registering on basically any level. I mean, Jennifer Lawrence is a fantastic actress in many roles, but here her eyes scream, "Get me out of this, get me out of this." And I mean, it seems like this is going to be her last one. Michael Fassbender, he has presence.
Yeah, they're not coming back. None of these characters.
Michael Fassbender,
actors, sorry.
Right. Michael Fassbender, he has presence every time he's on screen, but he just looks like, what do you want from me at this point? I've done everything I can do with Magneto. You didn't give me my own movie, so I can't do anything else with this character. Sophie Turner, I feel bad for her. She genuinely seems confused as far as what she can do, and often just has to cry and just kind of look scared and confused for most of the movie, because I'm guessing her character was not fleshed out from a screenwriting standpoint, and all the reshoots and the bad Hackney writing has just made her character arc in the film seem probably very confusing and meandered. And I just pretty much feel bad for her because she's a rising actress who kind of needs to figure out what's next after Game of Thrones. Jessica Chastain is like a NyQuil pill in this movie, and I know she's not supposed to have emotions, but something would have been appreciated. Something you could bring to this role, because I know she's a great actress, and it's the only two actors who I really think do anything that I can appreciate are maybe Nicholas Hoult, who has one good scene, and James McAvoy, who's just trying his best. He's a professional. He can make some bad lines seem at least a little elegant. Maybe it's a British accent. Maybe that's entrancing me more than it should. But yeah, man, I don't know. I really just did not like this experience at all.
I almost agree with everything you're saying. I really didn't like this as well. It's a bit of a dud. It's just watching it, you just can't help while you're seeing this movie to be like, oh, this is how it's going to end? Really? Because you want it to end like Days of Future Past. You want something that just feels more urgent. There's a reason to see this movie beyond. And when it kicks off with this space mission and you feel like you're just watching an episode of X-Men, I was kind of on board with that. I was like, okay, I'm fine. That's all. If that's what this movie is, let's just watch that. It's not really what I want, but if you're going to go to space and you're going to do fun space things, okay, cool. Let's do that. We never go back to space. Space gets completely forgotten.
I will give the movie, I have very few credits I'll give it, but one thing I will say is that scene with them in the jumpsuits where they're going to space, that was one of the few times oh, so this is basically an X-Men movie. This feels more like an X-Men, a traditional, from the comics X-Men movie than we've ever gotten. It's a shame the movie, that's probably the best action sequence in the film, but oh well.
And that's the thing is you begin in space, you end in space, right?
Right.
That's the rules of screenwriting is rising action. You don't start with a whole team being awesome in space and end with the whole team being awesome on Earth. And an environment that is so the opposite of what makes space cool. And it's not even a bad like action scene compared to the other ones. The ones in the middle are just completely forgettable. But I guess I was just having a hard time with all that. I do want to push back a little bit against this like idea that everybody feels trapped, because I know it seems that way, but if we believe the reporting, I mean, these actors did want to be here when they shot this movie. We have to remember they made this movie before the Fox-Disney merger. Disney bought Fox, and so matter-of-factly, this is the last movie that we're going to see in this franchise. They didn't make this movie knowing that it was going to be the end. And I know it kind of seems that way because these actors, I think the only actor here who I do think legitimately looks like they don't want to be here is Jennifer Lawrence and Michael Fassbender. I do think to an extent they know they're too good for this. And James McAvoy and Jessica Chastain just seem to be a little bit more of like, yeah, I'm here. I'll make best with what I have. Ty Sheridan, he woke up. So watching this movie though, you do have to remember that their contracts were up at Apocalypse. They didn't have to do this. You know, they filmed this in 2017. And if we're to believe the reporting, if we're to believe what a lot of these actors have said, they came back, like Michael Fassbender sat down with Kinberg and actually talked. It was his idea to like introduce Genosha to these movies, to have like the mutant home and all of that. That was his idea. So, and
I believe, if I heard correctly, Jennifer Lawrence, the only reason she decided to do the movie is because Kinberg directed it.
Right. It wasn't just Lawrence. A lot of them said that. And then Jessica Chastain, she never does superhero movies. This is like, I think her first one. And and she said in an interview, the reason I did this movie is because I liked the script. She thought the script was nice because it focused on strong female characters that she wanted to be a part of. So watching this movie, I think this is an issue maybe of post-production, or I don't know. I don't know what happened here.
I think it's a reshoot.
Maybe it is because, the moment to moment scenes are very strange. And you do get this sense of like a lack of budget, let the visual effects come to life in a more meaningful way. Cause I do see inklings of a good movie here where you have like kind of this long chase scene with everyone kind of chasing after the Phoenix. I don't like how they're making this Dark Phoenix so early, because what was cool about the Phoenix storyline was that she got to have her powers and be good for a while. And that was a big mistake The Last Stand made as well, where she just on a dime becomes this really villainous character and starts murdering everyone. And in Dark Phoenix, it's almost like they want to they never give you a reason until at a certain point of like why she's so dangerous. But like the X-Men turn on her fast in this movie, like so fast, like they're mad at her before she's even done anything all that bad. And I bring that up because there are so many weird shifting motivations with these characters. And I think to what you're saying, that is a product of the reshoots. That is a product of editing and just things just not coming together when they finally put it out. And that was affected by the merger, because by the time they're in post-production, the ink is about to dry. And they know that this is going to be the last one.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't doubt what you're saying. I know that's probably true, but I just don't see it on the screen. It does not translate that anyone involved with this really cares. And like I said, I mean, you know, I don't doubt that all the actors involved wanted to make this work. I don't doubt that they had their hearts in it, but that just doesn't translate, whether that's because of editing or just like this kind of bummer weight of knowing that like they're not going to get what they want out of this. And they're just like, well, might as well just finish it. Whatever the reason might be, those feelings you're talking about just simply, at least in my opinion, do not translate on screen.
You know, there's something wrong with your X-Men movie when Mystique doesn't use her powers once, except to shift from blue to white.
Although, I do think she's more blue in this movie than the last one, if I recall correctly.
Was she? I think.
I'd
have to look at it side by side. I thought she looked really weird in this movie, like in a bad way.
No. Oh, not literally blue. I meant like she was in the blue makeup, costume, whatever, more than last time, where I don't think she was really in the makeup that much at all. That's what I meant.
It's probably true. Yeah, there's a lot of skipping around too, because in the last movie, Jean and Cyclops, like they're not together. They just do that whole thing off screen. Like this movie starts and they're like, already like planning their picket fence, and it's very strange. But I was gonna bring up something else too, but you made me forget it and it's gone.
Sorry, my bad.
Oh no, I remember now. So Evan Peters. So yeah, Mystique only she doesn't use her powers at all, and Evan Peters is just this. Something's wrong with your X-Men movie when one of the fan favorite characters, the character who got the Marvel Cinematic Universe to kill off their version of Quicksilver, he is completely wasted in this. He doesn't get any moment to shine.
You're making me mad because you reminded me of this, and this. Oh man, John,
he's such a great character.
Mad. I know he's so good, and he has like an okay scene, like in space, it's fun. But yeah, dispose of him so carelessly. To dispose of him, it's and this knowing it's the last one. I think he was like, this is a real bummer.
All of the characters we've seen, him and Magneto are the two characters I care about being in their own film. And because of like they're supposed to be father-son. The movies never really address it, but can you imagine how much fun a Magneto Quicksilver movie, like road trip movie, would be? And instead of something kind of fun like that, we just have this weird sort of like, this is the movie that that the studios were afraid these movies would be if they made them in the 90s, if they stuck too close to the comics. And it doesn't even stick that close to the comics, but yeah, it just doesn't have like the sort of verve it needs to have any sort of impact, any sort of weight or reason to exist. And those are the movies that I know critics are really dunking on this. And there are a lot of films that are way worse than this one. But to what you're saying, the fact that it's so dull, that's just what's most disappointing, is you just want something. You want it to either be really bad or like good. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it. Because like I said, like, I'm not going to say every X-Men movie has been on par with the other or even good, but they all, at least to me, like even to some extent, X-Men Origins Wolverine had some like goofy charm to it. At least it's small select moments where it gave it a little bit of pulp. It gave it a little bit of like fun, goofy silliness that kept it alive. Even like that movie is like at least kind of fun bad in a certain sort of way. Yeah. This movie is just like the worst kind of blockbuster. It's just dull, soulless, and cynical. And it's not fun. Like there's select moments that are pretty enjoyable in a like ironic sort of way, like when Sophie Turner and Michael Fassbender are like doing these weird arm motions to like keep a helicopter from doing whatever Sophie Turner wanted to do. It's geez. Like that had me cracking up pretty hard in the theater during my press screening. But other than that, I mean, yeah, it's just like any enjoyment that's had in this movie is like kind of like an urgent desire to just feel something again. At least for me, like it was just like, can I just at least laugh at this movie? Can I at least just find some emotion or some way to connect this movie, even if it's in a spiteful, antagonistic way towards or against it? Like I just felt like so much this movie was just me being drained of anything I've had as far as appreciation for the series or any recollections of why I would stick up for a lot of these movies, even though, I mean, general consensus is that they're just kind of hacky and dumb, and I can't really say otherwise. But, I mean, like you said, Days of Future Past kind of like rejuvenated the series in many ways. It was the one that was like, yeah, the X-Men movies can be a lot of fun. They can be really compelling and really entertaining and enjoyable. And this one, it's just bland and dull, and it makes a good case for Disney as far as why this merger should have happened. And I didn't want to say that, but that's the truth of the matter watching this movie.
Yeah. There's not a single X-Men movie I've hated. I dislike Wolverine Origins, same as you. I think we're basically about the same on that. I might like a little more than you do.
Sure.
I think the Wolverine is fine. It's not like the best movie in the world, but it's fine for what it is. And then you have Apocalypse, which we agree is, it's also not very good, but it's I don't know, it has likability to it. And then Last Stand was a movie we both saw when we were a bit younger, so we have to keep that in mind. Yeah, I saw that when I was like 15. I got a real kick out of it in the theater. These were some of the first superhero movies I saw in the theater ever. I saw the first X-Men when I was 9 years old. I saw X2, blew my mind. And Spider-Man, those were my theatrical superhero movie experiences. Like, I wasn't watching Steel in the theater. I was too young to see Batman and Robin in the theater. I had to wait. But yeah, I look at the legacy of these X-Men movies, and I think there's so much to appreciate. I think they've done so much to be forerunners to what the Marvel Cinematic Universe would eventually become. They're like guinea pigs. They're always kind of just like testing out, like different crazy things in these movies.
Yeah. They have a underdog quality almost.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And, I'm just so disappointed. I've been busting my ass as an X-Men fan for all these years. And
only to be disrespected and not go to X-Men land.
We will cover it. We will cover it. Because producer Den is selling us. We got to cover it. So
yeah, right.
All right. Final grade, C-, and that's being extremely generous.
Yeah.
Again, super average, but it's like average with that little extra minus just for the fact that I think being average is also a sin.
Yeah, I ultimately a lot more negative on this. I just, like I said, I mean, I will support a lot of comic book superhero movies. Like, I think on the show I've talked about, like, I like Spider-Man 3. I like Batman v Superman. I like Man of Steel. I like a lot of movies based on superhero comic book properties that a lot of people will be easily dismissing, and I'll see something in them that I enjoy. It's pretty rare for me to see, even though I talk a lot about comic book fatigue. I mean, I guess there's a bit of irony there, but generally, more often than not, I tend to find something of value or interest or entertainment value in a comic book property, because I just, like you, there's something about comic book superhero movies that just, they bring that childlike joy. They bring that enthusiasm for the cinema, for seeing a popcorn blockbuster that makes going to see blockbusters so enjoyable. And this movie really just has nothing, at least for me. It had nothing really redeemable or enjoyable or worthwhile as a patron of this series, or just viewing it all these decades. And knowing that this is probably the last official X-Men movie that we're going to get besides the offshoot of New Mutants, and assuming we're going to get another Deadpool, maybe X-Force movie at some point, it's just so annoying and frustrating in many, many different ways. And for me, it's a D film. Yeah,
such a shame. But a couple quick things. Hans Zimmer did the music for this, and I had to bring it up because you mentioned Batman v Superman. A lot of us thought he was never going to do another superhero film because apparently he had a just awful experience with the score for that one. But he did the score for this, for Dark Phoenix, and yeah, I guess give it a listen. It's actually not bad. Because it's Hans Zimmer. So he obviously knows what he's doing. I think he also did The Lion King coming out later this year. So I'm hoping that's going to be pretty good. I haven't heard anything about it yet. So
I'm just imagining like that opening of Lion King with like dun, dun.
That's fantastic. Yes. I was just going to mention that I think he also did Widows last. That was the last movie he did. But yeah, and that's one of the best scores of that year. But all right. Do you know what the Rotten Tomatoes score is, Will Ashton, of this movie?
Last I checked, it was 20%. Is it higher or lower than that now?
It's 23% as of this recording, based on 152 reviews. That means 23% of the critics who rated it did so 23% of critics disliked it. I almost said the 23%. Wait, no, I have that backwards again. I had it right in my head and then I said it wrong. 23% of critics liked it. So there you go. And average rating is 4.5. Box office wise, yeah, we're recording this before we have any sort of box office numbers to look at. It's projected to make between $50 and $60 million. It's opening in over 3,700 theaters. I don't know. Something about that just doesn't. That's not a ton for an X-Men movie, to be clear. It's not a ton for like Aladdin made like 90 million. You know,
Yeah.
so it maybe is going to make around then, but the studio is actually projecting more like 40 to 50 million, which sounds about right. Like I think 45, 50 million probably makes sense. If it makes even less than that, you'll know before we do, or before the recording version of ourselves do. I think international is what's going to save this movie. It's probably going to do pretty well in China.
Maybe. Yeah, it just feels like, I mean, at least as far as anyone I know or have talked to, I can't think of anybody who's like genuinely enthusiastic about this film or was like anticipating it in any real or serious way.
Right. Yeah.
It just feels like, it felt like to me, like the actors are like, oh, I'm kind of obligated to do this, or I guess I should just see it because I've seen the other ones. But I can't think of a single soul who's like, oh yeah, Dark Phoenix, let's go, let's do this. I can't wait.
Sure.
So,
well, X-Men films tend to do pretty okay overseas. So
okay.
We'll see what happens. I don't know. It doesn't really matter because Disney can take a wash on this and be totally fine. It doesn't matter at this point.
It doesn't affect them. Yeah.
And they're not spending much on marketing for this, so it's not like they'll probably make their production budget like this weekend, and from there, they'll probably make a little bit more than breaking even. And this is not a big disaster for Disney. You do not have to feel bad for them. But all right, that is Dark Phoenix. Let's talk about Late Night. Okay. Late Night is a new comedy written by and starring Mindy Kaling. It premiered at Sundance. So I saw this movie 6 months ago. So Will, you're going to have to do some of the heavy lifting on this one because you saw it far more recently than I did. I'm sure there are plenty of things I've forgotten. But yeah, Mindy Kaling is in this. She plays a young go-getter who applies for a job to become a comedic writer for a late night talk show. It used to be extremely popular, but it's a lot like other late night format shows these days. It's waned in interest. People don't really care anymore. The show itself is hosted by Catherine Newberry, who's played by Emma Thompson. She has kind of a wry, dry wit to her comedy. And Newberry, she's only interested in hiring Kaling's character Molly in the first place because she's noticed that her entire writing staff is made up of white men, which goes against the brand of feminism she purports on her own show. It's like a bit of irony, and she doesn't really know her writing staff. She doesn't know their names. And so we have her and Molly kind of teaming up, but then also there's this storyline of like bringing a late night show back to prime time, back to people caring again. And Molly is her secret ingredient to that. We have a clip of Molly and Catherine Newberry being interviewed by the press as these two have been sort of working to revamp the show into something more relevant. Here is the clip.
How would you describe Molly?
Molly is... Oh.
She said I was the vibrant splash of color on the gray canvas of our writing staff. I was really touched. And then she said something to me that I will never forget. She said to me that despite our very different backgrounds, that I reminded her of a younger her.
Me. Isn't that wonderful?
I mean, whoosh.
All right, that is a clip from Late Night. It is actually playing in limited release right now, but it is going to be going, I think, at a pretty, not a huge release, but it's going to be hitting nationwide June 14th, I want to say. So
next week.
Right.
Or this week.
Well, I tweeted out that to me, this movie is more memorable for its characters than it is for its comedy. I didn't find it particularly funny, but of course, comedy is subjective. So I want to know, did Late Night make you yearn for the heyday or hey night of late night television?
I mean, we're like, yeah. I don't know. I was trying to think like where I stand on late night television now because, I mean, in some ways it's kind of at a boon. In some ways it's, kind of dwindling into like over excessive need to make viral content, but I'll save that conversation for my late show conversation. I don't know what the spin-off version of that show would be, but, okay. Yeah, Late Night, I didn't have super high expectations going in. I know from you and several other critics who saw it at Sundance that the reviews are maybe not tepid, but like kind of like decent to good, with some people being more medium to negative on it. Nobody really, I mean, with the exception of like maybe a few people, nobody was really like overly enthusiastic about it, but a lot of people seem to be pretty warm and receptive to it. So yeah, overall as a film, like I said, I don't want to take too much time on it because I know you talked about it a lot in the Sundance episode, but as a film, yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's probably best seen as like an Amazon rental or maybe an airplane viewing, because the film, it kind of mirrors the television quality of the film by having kind of like, you know, sitcom format as far as its visual approach. There are a couple of shots in here that are kind of cinematic. It's hard to make New York look bad on the big screen, but, you know, it's written by Mindy Kaling, who primarily has a lot of sitcom experience. There's a lot of kind of sitcom beats in it that kind of make the film a little more formulaic than I was ultimately hoping. But I think, to your credit, I think what you're saying is pretty on point in that the performances and the characters are, I think, what shine here, particularly Emma Thompson, who I think this might, honestly, as far as I can recall, because I don't know if I've seen everything she has done in these past couple years, but I think this is probably her best performance since Saving Mr. Banks. She's really, really terrific in this movie, and I think she's having a lot of fun with this character. It's kind of like a mix of, well, it's primarily, I think, supposed to be David Letterman, particularly based on a controversy that happens 3/4 away into the film. I believe that's directly inspired by a controversy that happened with David Letterman towards the end of his tenure. And I think there's a little bit of Conan in there, because I know Conan has gotten in trouble for having a primarily white writing staff. So I don't know if that was inspired by him or not. But yeah, no, I think she has a lot of fun with the role. I think she brings a lot of that wry wit that you're talking about and really flourishes a lot of the lines she's giving. And I'm sure she improvised a couple of things as well, because she's a pretty renowned screenwriter herself. But yeah, I mean, it definitely, I mean, Mindy Kaling's great. I'm trying to think, who are all the supporting cast, because I recognize them from things, but I don't know their names. Max Casella.
Yeah.
Who is great. I think he's pretty underrated as a character actor. That guy.
He's the I, Tonya guy, right?
Was he I, Tonya?
Oh, maybe I might be switching him as something.
Oh wait,
else,
no, you're thinking of, that's what that guy's from. I do recognize that guy from something. No, not that guy. He's a guy with the mustache. I don't know if you remember. He is like, he's in a lot of stuff. He never really plays the lead role though, but, yeah, he is really good in this. Hugh Darcy is in this in the role I was not anticipating. Sorry, Hugh Dancy. And a role I was not really anticipating as like the hotshot comedian of the group. Mm-hmm, yeah. And I don't know. I always think he's kind of an underrated actor too. Like I think he never really got his like big push that he should have.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of beating around the horse, but I mean, it's a lot of TV like actors in this, right? Like Reed Scott and
yeah. Well, or is it Darcy or Dancy?
Dancy.
Now I'm mixing my Dancy. Okay, he's kind of like a lot of times like the actor you hire when you can't get James Marsden, and James Marsden's kind of like the guy you get.
He was good in Hannibal, though.
Oh, was he? I still need to see Hannibal.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean he's
John
alright.
Lithgow.
Oh yeah, John
Amy
Lithgow.
Ryan.
Oh, great. Mm-hmm.
There's some good. Ike Barinholtz has kind of a funny role
Dane
in this.
Cook-esque role, I guess.
A what?
Like a Dane Cook-esque role.
I was thinking more of like Daniel Tosh, to be honest.
Well, Dane Tosh is a parody of Dane Cook, or at least he was.
Well, exactly. I mean,
and then he kind of became.
You could also draw, like Jimmy Fallon or something like that. I mean, I don't know. It feels like a stretch, but there's kind of like younger dudes who are trying to turn like late night into something else.
I mean, bro-y comedy. You can say it like, kind of like that, like over masculine, kind of like intentionally ignorant type of, like kind of overgetic comedy. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know if there's too much I can say about it. It's fun in a kind of charming yet a little forgettable sort of way. Like I said, I saw it on I think Wednesday, and it's not like that's really stuck with me in like the 2 day or 1 day since I've seen it. But I think for the time I spent with it, I had a good amount of fun. I think even more than I anticipated, and it's worth checking out.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not funny, but I laughed a few times.
I got some good
it's
laughs
warm.
and chuckles.
So the director here is Nisha Ganatra, and she's much more known for her TV work, for Better Things. She's done a bunch of TV movies, some that aren't that great, but she's directed episodes of some really great shows. She's directed Dear White People, Girls, Fresh Off the Boat, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Shameless. She did an episode of Mr. Robot, Mindy Project, Transparent. I think it was like the big award winner for her. She's been all over the TV world as a director.
It's pretty diverse as far as the types of shows too.
Right. Like, she hasn't really been much of like a showrunner. Like, she did 3 episodes of Better Things. I think she did a bunch of episodes of You, Me, Her, but she's not like, she's done like a little bit of everything. She'll do like a couple episodes here and there for different shows. So
like
this,
a journeywoman kind of, like someone
exactly.
Who kind of bounce around. Yeah.
Yeah, journeywoman. And she's definitely somebody, I think this is her first feature film, like theatrical. I think she's just done short films and TV movies in addition to her television work. So when you watch this movie, it does have that sort of thing. Like, this could be a show. Like, in fact,
right.
Which
is why I think it would play better on like a smaller screen, but
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Because some of the like, for example, there's like a romance that kind of probably would have taken its time over a season, right. And you have like a whole episode that you can devote to the John Lithgow dynamic that kind of just quickly goes fast here, and there's so many characters you can use. Like the Ike Barinholtz character is kind of like this sort of villain to come in. This idea of like the writing staff getting used to her. It really does feel like the Mindy Project Part 2. And yeah.
And I was going to say, I mean, I am actually kind of glad it's a movie, because I feel like if it was a show or a pilot, it probably would have been dismissed as like, oh, this is Mindy Kaling trying to be 30 Rock or something. That's not really fair to her, but I just see that happening if it was like trying to become like a season or a show. So I'm actually kind of glad that it's self-contained in that sort of way, but I can see what you mean. Yeah, I think a lot of the character beats probably would have been a little more fleshed out and organic in that perspective.
Yeah, I guess the advantage this could have had as a show is that it could have maybe taken its time a little bit more, and then maybe get a sense of like what the audience wants. This will never get a sequel, but this is the kind of show that I think like the second season would have been really great. And instead we're getting like a truncated first season that's pretty disposable, but has some likable qualities.
Yeah, I mean, I can get that, but I also think the movie itself is pretty breezy. Like, it's a comfortable kind of loose, easy watch. It does have
like
a lot of
100 minutes, 102 minutes.
It's 2 hours. But yeah, I mean, it flows pretty well. Like, it definitely it keeps the energy pretty high. The character beats definitely keep the movie pretty active and going in a lot of different respects. So, I mean, yeah, it's a viewing experience. I do think it's a pretty enjoyable one, but I do see myself, like, if I had watched this on Amazon Prime, or if I had seen it,
which it's an Amazon Studios movie, so
right? That's why, yeah, I bring it up. Yeah, that's why I think it's probably going to go there pretty quickly. I don't know what the theatrical box office or what its like theater run is going to be, but I mean, I do hope. I mean, if you want something, like kind of away from the summer blockbuster crowd, this is definitely kind of good counter programming in that regard. It's like nice, simple, easy, charming, good graces. It doesn't really, leave a big resonance in your mental capacity, but it has enough going for it that I think it's really going to be a crowd pleaser, which is probably why Amazon spent like $12 million, I believe, at Sundance to acquire it.
They spent 13. Yeah,
13. Wow. Okay.
I don't see it making. It might make like 30, maybe 40.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a busy summer, and this is a weird time to release this movie. I did do a quick double check. This is an hour and 42 minutes, not 2 hours.
Okay, well, the schedule I got said it was like 119 minutes, so I guess that was off.
I checked a few different things. I mean, not unless there's like two versions
probably
of
right,
it,
yeah.
Because there's a Sundance version and who knows? It could have been changed last minute. That happened to us with Kid Who Would Be King. Also, I thought this was PG-13, but when I was looking this up, I saw that it was rated R.
That's a good point, actually. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I was going to say. That's in a kind of critical.
Because then it's definitely not
way.
Making $40 million.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is that like the movie, I mean, this isn't like a huge thing. It's just something that kind of bugged me as I was watching it, is that like yeah, like throughout the movie, it definitely feels like it should be PG-13.
Yeah.
And they just keep throwing like casual F-bombs in the film, which, I mean, makes it more realistic, but it feels totally unnecessary. I think for a film like this, it's probably going to cut its commercial value. Yeah. And that's not to say, I'm not saying it should be censored or watered down or anything, but it definitely feels like there was no real need to make this movie R-rated, because otherwise, like, it's pretty, it's like PG-13 material.
Yeah.
And yeah, that definitely bugged me as I was watching it. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I wish we could talk about just how meaningless the rating system is in the first place, and that we even have to follow these ridiculous rules.
But if we had to play in this ball game,
right?
I think I mean, like, it's like, like, not the end of the world. Like, it doesn't, it's not like it hurt the movie to have it. It just seemed like for its commercial, I mean, again, like, not that a film its box office values it or not, but I feel like if I were like in a position like Amazon, I'd be like, hey, maybe we could cut some of these F-bombs out.
Although I'm guessing the calculus here is that, like, they don't think this is going, they don't think like people under 17 are going to care about this movie and go watch it.
I mean, I don't know, because, like, doesn't Mindy Kaling have a pretty big following, like with the Mindy Project and The Office?
Yeah, but a lot of her, like, that's like high schooler, like college students. I don't know. I don't see like teenagers, I mean,
teens, they love The Office, man.
All right. Fair enough.
I don't know. Yeah.
But all right. Late nights. I don't remember what my letter grade for this was. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars.
That's a B-.
It's like, yeah, I was going to say, it's like, it's either a B- or a C+. I'm more of a B-. I don't, I think it's nice. It's very nice. What about you, Will?
Yeah, I was actually a little higher on it, surprisingly. I was either a B or a B- on the film. And I think I'm ultimately going to settle for B- just because I don't, like I said, it's not too memorable. It's not quite as distinctive enough. There's definitely topics that are brought up that are pretty thought-provoking, and I think they could have, like you said, to your point, could have been explored maybe a little more deeper and a little more thoughtfully in a season or in a show format. But they're just kind of like sprinkled and brought up throughout the film and then just not really addressed or brought up again. And I think there's a stronger movie in here, in a film that maybe could have been like a broadcast news, something of that standard. And ultimately we got kind of like a better than average Morning Glory kind of film. Maybe that's not even fair to say. I think it's its own thing. I don't really want to compare it to 2 films. I'm sorry I did. Yeah, I think it's solid, nice, good film for many different reasons, but it's not quite like The Big Sick, where Amazon is like, putting in the summer as a big summer feel good crowd pleaser. And I do think it's going to work as a crowd pleaser, but yeah, I don't think it's going to hit those high marks and maybe the way they were hoping, maybe not. So yeah, for me, it's a B-. It's good for what it is, but could have been a little better.
Yeah. Maybe we'll be proven wrong. Maybe it'll be a huge box office hit like The Big Sick. You never know.
I mean, all for it. I'll credit to it because, I want original, non-IP films to make a splash. And it seems like the summer is really not proving that, especially with Booksmart and Brightburn being overshadowed by Aladdin.
Yeah, for sure. But all right, let's move on to our next film. And, I forgot to say, Late Nights, Rotten Tomatoes. It's about in line with what we have. It has a 78% based on 79
that's
reviews.
Pretty good.
Which, yeah, very good. So that's more of like B territory. So a little bit higher than you and me, but yeah,
it's like BB plus,
yeah. Yeah. But okay, let's move on to a film that you saw that I did not see because I just didn't want to. I decided to watch something else. I was supposed to see this movie on Tuesday, and I decided instead to have a date night with my girlfriend because I hadn't seen her in like a week. And it's all about priorities. Will Ashton, I mean,
you could have taken her to the movie.
She didn't want to see it. I told her, I was like, we could go watch Secret Life of Pets 2. And she's like, I'd rather have quality time. And I was like, yeah, that sounds nice. So that's what we did. Secret Life of Pets.
Apologies to your friend Brian Lynch, I guess.
Well, like I said, priorities.
Yeah.
So, Will, I haven't really watched the trailers for this. I only just watched the clip that we have for this movie coming up. I don't really know, because that I wasn't a big fan of the first Secret Life of Pets. I was really annoyed with that film. I just didn't like how it was so shamelessly ripping off other movies, mainly the Toy Story movies. And I was baffled by people really liking it. People really liked Secret Life of Pets, not just a lot of audiences because it made a ton of money, but also critics. It has a really good Rotten Tomato score. So, and I came out of the movie just being like, that was, I don't know. It didn't have an effect on me whatsoever. Did you like the first Secret Life of Pets? Am I shouting into the wind?
To an extent, I did. Yeah, I'm a little more favorable on it than you were. But, I mean, to say I was a fan would be a stretch. Yeah, I mean, when it came out, when I saw it, I thought it was pretty, like, middle ground Illumination. And, I mean, that's not to say that they've really had, like...
I was going to say, like, what's...
A lot of peaks in as opposed to their valleys, but...
I mean, I guess the first Despicable Me, and I guess some people would say Sing.
I definitely would say Sing. I like Sing. I'm in the loud minority on that one. I thought that was pretty good.
All right.
But I also have a strong affinity for the director that a story I keep teasing and maybe we'll share one day. But
there we go again.
Yeah, I definitely think with the Secret Life of Pets, it was kind of like on par with I'm trying to think what they have because a lot of their movies are very forgettable. But it was better than like Hop or
Lorax.
I was gonna say the Dr. Seuss movies, which I know you kind of like the Grinch, but I really wasn't a fan of that.
Yeah. This is the same director. So Chris Renaud, he did Despicable Me. I think he did the he did not Ice Age, but he did something for Ice Age. Do I have that wrong?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. I think he did a short for Ice Age, but I'd have to look that up. But
like a scrap one?
Yeah. It was like No Nuts or something like that. It was a while back. Oh. But yeah, he did Despicable Me. Shirts. He did Despicable Me 2. And then he did this Secret Life of Pets and Secret Life of Pets 2. I think that's it though.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. But
and the Lorax. Forgot about the Lorax.
Yeah, man.
That was all him.
Not a fan of the Lorax, but anyway, yeah, to answer your previous question, as far as the Secret Life of Pets goes, I was really strictly down the middle on it. I think there's as much to admire about it as there is to disdain, in that I kind of appreciate how willing this series is to be kooky and wild and goofy and vibrant in a way that kind of harkens back to a lot of cartoons that I liked as a kid, like the Looney Tunes and stuff like that. Not that it's anywhere near Looney Tunes quality as its peak, at least, but I don't know. There's the backdrops are gorgeous. The animations has a nice fluidity to it that I've always appreciated. I think the movie is aware of its limitations in certain respects, and that it's not really trying to hit the emotional peaks of Toy Story or any of the Toy Story sequels. But at the same time, there is kind of a heartfelt sincerity to certain emotional beats in that film that I find ultimately kind of touching. And maybe that's just because I'm a dog person and I like dogs. But I mean, it has a bubbly, kind of poppy, fun silliness to it that I think made me appreciate it past the cookie cutter formulaic ripoff that it basically is.
I like the trailer for the first. Like, I liked the concept. I like dogs. But I think the cookie cutter concept was just a little bit too far for me personally.
I mean, if Toy Story is Fruit Loops, this is like the off-brand, like, whatever those, like, Loop-de-Fruits or whatever, like some, like, obvious, like, knockoff of it. That it's very clearly what it wants to, be like the, second tier version of it that appeals to kids but doesn't have the same lasting resonance. But it made a lot of money, so we got a sequel. And I will say that I don't know if I'd call it bad, but I think I was more cognizant of the flaws this time around than I was with the first movie, or maybe just because I was pretty aware of the formula. By this point, I was more willing to recognize the shortcomings of this now franchise. Should I even bother with the plot, or do you think anyone cares about that?
I mean, I guess I'm just curious. We have this clip over here, and I don't even understand the context.
Because I should say there's like 3 storylines going on. There's not like a main plot to this. There's like a storyline involving Max the dog, who's now played by Patton Oswalt. There's a storyline with Kevin Hart's Bunny character with Tiffany Haddish.
He's still in this? Ugh.
Yeah, and Jenny Slate's Gidget dog character. So which story are we talking about for the clip?
I guess we should just go with, because in the clip we have is Max and Duke is his name, and Rooster.
Oh, the Eric Stone Street?
Yeah.
Yeah. From Modern Family?
Yeah, and then Rooster's played by Harrison Ford.
Harrison
Ford.
Of it. Yeah, and he's... I don't know if you're going to believe me, but Harrison Ford is actually really great in this movie.
I mean, I think he's kind of funny in the clip. I'll say it.
Right. Yeah, he's the best part of the movie, for sure. So
what's going on? What are they what's going on in this movie?
If I recall correctly, this is another film that's eroding from my memory, even though it's only been a couple days. But if I recall correctly, Rooster the dog, played by Harrison Ford, is trying to scold Max for not being like a true dog, like being too much of a city boy. And he kind of wants him to, I guess, kind of man up, for lack of a better term. And kind of own up to being a dog. Does that sound about right?
I guess so. Sure. I mean, sure. He is a city dog, and his name is Rooster. I don't know what's going on right now.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, Brian Lynch. If you're out there, I'm just assuming Brian Lynch is actually listening to this because you guys correspond.
You just want me to say negative things about Brian. That's great.
I don't want to say anything negative about Brian.
Yeah, I don't either. Brian's fantastic.
I want him to follow me on Twitter too.
Okay, like in this clip, we have Rooster trying to, I guess, give parenting advice. That's the thing I don't understand, but I guess I'm not going to understand it. So here's just what happens from there.
Ah! Oh, hello.
Dog's got 2 things in this life: his water bowl and his dignity. You take one, you take the other.
I didn't know this was your bowl.
What, the cone block in your view? It's got my name on the side.
We are so sorry, Mr.
Chicken?
Name's not Chicken. Do I look like a chicken to you?
No, sir.
No, not even a little.
Name's Rooster.
Oh, okay. I'm Max, and
hey,
this
what's that kid doing in the cage? Something wrong with him? You got the fever?
That's Liam. He likes to run.
So let him run.
Well, Liam's super fast. We blink and he's up a tree.
So then your kid's up a tree. What's the problem?
Well, he could fall.
He might.
And then he hurts himself.
Oh, so he got really high up in this hypothetical tree. Kid gets hurt, he learns not to do it again. You know how many electric cords I've chewed?
Like multiple cords?
1. It shocked me. I walked backward for a week, but I never chewed a cord again.
All right, that is a clip from Secret Life of Pets 2. I think we made the right choice in playing that one over the others, because I don't know. I like Harrison Ford as this sort of stoic dog lecturing. It reminds me of Beverly Hills Chihuahua. That character, Delgado, I think his name was. You remember?
You have a better memory of Beverly Hills Chihuahua than I do, John.
I don't remember the voice cast, to be honest, but besides, I guess, the main ones. But anyway, Secret Life of Pets 2. So it sounds like it's not really good.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very corporate. It's shallow. It really doesn't offer audiences anything other than kind of pandering, fodder. I don't know, like words that just describe as kind of like empty amusement, I guess. Just like there to be kind of, just surface level entertaining. Not really introducing any core values or anything insightful or meaningful, but I mean, it is amusing in sporadic fashion. I do think that just by Illumination kind of disregarding any sort of like structured script, as far as the story, there is a little more wiggle room to have their moments of fun. For instance, there is a 2D superhero dream sequence involving Kevin Hart's bunny character that is pretty enjoyable and shortly lived, unfortunately. And later on, there's like, say, a sequence where the aforementioned bunny and a monkey character are having a kung fu battle. And like, that's pretty fun as far as the animation approach and concept is concerned. But as a film, yeah, it's what you expect. It's Illumination. It's cute, but it's very disposable. It's very cynical as far as what its intentions are. But if you like these movies, if you get a kick out of them and your kids get a kick out of them, I mean, you'll probably get something out of this one as well. But for me, it wasn't really much of anything worth recommending. So I'll give it a C+.
All right, C+. I mean, that's higher than the grade I gave the first one. So
really? Okay.
Yeah, I think I gave the first one a D+. I really did not like that. I was so bored.
I guess not.
Yeah, I am glad that they replaced Louis C.K. with Patton Oswalt.
Yeah, that would have been awkward if they kept him on.
Yeah, well, not just because Louis C.K., he got canceled, and we have to follow the cancellation rules. But also, just, I don't think he did a good job voice acting. Maybe some people disagree with me on that, but I didn't like Max in the first movie. I thought the way he voiced him was weird.
It was just a very odd casting choice from the beginning.
It didn't
like
match.
Even in 2016. Yeah, it never really fit. I mean, that's an issue with a lot of characters in the Secret Life of Pets movies, is that for the most part, their character design doesn't often fit the voice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of disappointing. I mean, like, not to say anything.
Okay, yeah, Final Fantasy Spirits Within. That set the bar.
What? Oh, okay.
Final Fantasy Spirits Within.
Is that the 1999 film that they made?
No, that's the one where like Steve Buscemi like voices like a guy who just does not look anything like Steve Buscemi. Do you not know about this?
I mean, I saw the flop film where it was like state of the art animation. I saw that Final Fantasy. I didn't see anything else from that.
Yeah, Spirits Within. That was like, I think early 2000s, but yeah, do you remember it was like all CGI?
Yeah.
And Steve Buscemi, his voice came out of a guy who kind of looked like just, I don't know how to describe, like just like a stock photo guy.
Again, your memory of this particular film is a lot stronger than mine. I just remember seeing it.
I'm gonna send you
being like,
okay, I'll send you the clip.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, not to say that you're wrong. I'm just saying that my recollection of Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within was I saw it and I was like, well, that wasn't very good.
I just wanted to have a laugh with you about this, but okay. That's
sorry,
fine.
I don't. I'm not very in tune with video games, and therefore the movies themselves tend to fade from my memory as well.
What an excuse! I don't like it. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, but I guess going back to your earlier point, yeah, I mean, I never felt like Louis C.K. was right for the part of Max to begin with for reasons that didn't involve his scandals. But yeah, I think Patton Oswalt's a better fit. Like again, the character design doesn't really fit Patton Oswalt, and that's
it's not that much better. Just judging from what I'm seeing in this clip, because I'm just hearing Remy from Ratatouille.
Right, it doesn't fit the character design because it obviously wasn't designed for Patton Oswalt, and so I mean, I'll say that I think it works, I guess, a little better here because I think Patton Oswalt's a better voice actor, and I think he has a more distinctive voice that fits a cartoon character. But yeah, the role of Max, I don't really know who would be right for the part, but it's still never
Steve Buscemi,
right.
Clearly.
Yeah, definitely.
Buscemi could have done it. Yeah.
Say his Spy Kids 2 line for all the kids to ponder upon.
Yes. Okay, so box office wise, I mean, this is going to dominate. I mean, is there any question?
I think it might do better than Dark Phoenix.
Oh, 100%. You know, it hasn't made more so far. Like, I think Dark Phoenix opened in China a day early, so that's already made a little bit of money. Secret Life of Pets 2, I think, has only made a few million from opening in like one country. It might have been the UK, but yeah, I think Secret Life of Pets, it's opening in 4,400 theaters. It's a family film, summer film. I think like Aladdin was 2 weeks ago, and like families are looking for another kids film. The ones that saw Aladdin, I mean, why see Aladdin again when we haven't seen an animated film since Ugly Dolls? No one watched that. So we're due. So I think this is going to make a ton of cash. I mean, I think they're projecting it to make about 60 million. I honestly could see it doing way bigger than that. Maybe 80,
It'll
85.
I was going to say, I was thinking 80, maybe 90.
Domestically, of course, we should always temper that. Internationally, it sort of depends, because Illumination, sometimes they do really well internationally. Sometimes they do amazing internationally. Other times they don't. But I don't remember how Secret Life of Pets, the first one, did overseas. I want to say it did really well because that movie made over $1 billion. So it kind of had to have.
Oh, well, this is a French animation studio as well, should be noted. So I think that also comes into play as far as its international appeal.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but
I mean, Universal produced it, and yeah.
Right. Well, sure, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I know that these movies tend to be they know how to market them. I mean, I find the marketing material for Illumination movies very grating, and I mean, while I tend to like, at least to a mild extent, a number of their films, as far as just amusing fluff, I do think that they kind of pick up the worst traits of DreamWorks films in many ways, and I do think that there is something kind of sad about their continued success, and I think having a film like Secret Life of Pets 2, especially following The Grinch, definitely spells a troubling trend. I'd rather them make another movie like Sing, but I mean, money talks, or whatever that phrase is. Was it money talks, something walks?
I don't know.
Okay, it's getting late.
You're referencing something that I'm not going to be able to help you out with. I am curious though, because you said this is a French studio.
I believe so. Yeah.
What studios in this is French? Because Illumination,
the animation
French.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of like French animators are involved with Illumination films.
Oh, okay. Because Illumination's American, but so you're saying that a lot of the animators themselves are like probably French Canadian.
I believe so. I mean, I can double check this to verify it, but
I didn't know that. That's fascinating to hear.
Yeah, I just know that because I know this came out around this information came out around the time the first Despicable Me movie was coming out, because it was like a big deal that this like French-based studio that people weren't really counting on went out and made this like hugely successful out of nowhere animated film, and then that obviously.
But started, Illumination. Illumination was started in America, I should say.
It did. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, because the guy who founded it was Chris Meledandri, and he's American. But I could see what you're saying. Maybe that he maybe he did hire a lot of French animators, and maybe that's what you're thinking of.
I guess so. Yeah, I just know that there's definitely a lot of French ties to their. Yeah, I guess they acquired an animation department of the French animation, and I guess So
gotcha.
Somehow the French commoners comment if you happen to know all the details. But I know.
Yes.
The French are somehow involved with Illumination to, from what I've been told, a pretty significant extent.
Yeah. Well, Illumination's always been a blind spot for me because I just have never been that taken by their films. Despite animated like films tend to be my favorite films, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I just there's something about the Illumination style in a lot of ways that just I don't think I've ever really connected with one of their films beyond like, I thought The Grinch was kind of fun, and that's really as far as it goes. But that Secret Life of Pets 2, I think that it's going to do pretty well. I think people are really going to like it. And so far the response has been pretty mixed. 56% on Rotten Tomatoes, 59 reviews so far as time of this recording. So pretty mixed. Sounds about right. I mean, we mentioned like the first film, like that was in the 70s, I want to say, when that came out, for the tomato meter. Like most critics like that one. This one, it seems a little bit more mixed, and based on what I'm hearing from you, Will, that is not a huge surprise. But all right, we have one last film to finish things out. Oh, what's up?
Oh, sorry. No, I was gonna. So I guess Part of Illumination is a company called Illumination MacGuff, which is, I guess, based in France, and they are part of their animation arm and VFX company. So they've been, I guess, involved since 2011. So,
I mean, I guess you could say, because like DreamWorks Animation is partly based in Vancouver, but it's not really like a Canadian. But at the same time, because they moved from Redwood City to Canada. But it sounds more like you're saying, like, if it's more based in that area, I'm sure the influence is pretty strong. Yeah.
If I recall correctly, and I'm not going to say I know anything more about Pixar than you, but I thought the Canadian branch of that was like kind of like they're making like the Toy Story horror thing on on ABC and stuff like the smaller projects.
I'm talking about primary.
Yeah. Oh, DreamWorks, because I thought there's like a Canadian branch of Pixar as well.
Well, yeah, all the animation studios have a presence in Vancouver. Vancouver is like a mecca of animation, but it's less about the country itself. I mean, it has to do with a lot of different things. We could get into it for sure.
Something about French-speaking countries, I guess. Bring all these animators.
French are really great artists. I think that's,
for sure.
That's a big thing of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the second week in a row. Or no, because we talked about how beautiful the French language is 2 weeks ago. We were talking about
the French.
If you recall, we were talking about the 400 blows. That's what it was. It wasn't on the main show.
If I could, I would speak French because I think it's maybe the most beautiful language that we have.
All right. Well, let's finish this out with our last movie of the week, The Souvenir. I saw this film. I think you said you...
Is it French?
No, it is not.
Aw, what a segue that would have been.
Yes, I know, right? It is English. And yeah, I think you said that this is going to be coming out in your area later this summer, maybe around August.
That's what Fandango says. I really don't know for sure, though.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So Souvenir, this was a big hit at Sundance. It was one of the ones that I was not able to catch. This is another A24 film. And it's just now hitting a wider release. It was technically released here in the US around like May 17th, but I'm just getting around to it. It's been playing in the Bay Area for at least a week or two. But yes, The Souvenir. This is the newest indie drama from Joanna Hogg. And just to get this out of the way, it's actually part one of a two-part story. It's also semi-biographical. It takes place in the early 1980s in the UK. And it's really about Hogg's life when she was in her early 20s, mid-20s. And this is her fourth film. She also did Unrelated in 2007, and then she did Archipelago and Exhibition. Will, have you seen any of Hogg's filmography?
I don't think so. Not that I can recall off the top of my head.
Same here. I've heard of all three of these films. I've never seen them, but I'm definitely curious just because she is one of those directors I've heard a lot about. And I know The Souvenir has been a very anticipated film for a lot of people that I follow. So The Souvenir. It follows a young woman named Judy. She's played by Honor Swinton Byrne. She's the daughter of Tilda Swinton. In real life, I should say. And Tilda Swinton also plays her mother. So a nice little mother-daughter thing going on there. Not as big a part of the story as that may sound. This is not a mother-daughter movie. Judy is an aspiring filmmaker, and she's going around her town. She's trying to drum up resources and interests into making her first feature film, but she's still in film school. And as it happens, she begins to fall in love with an older man that she finds charming and fascinating. But then he goes on to systematically become an absolute nightmare in every aspect of her life. And this seems to tie back, and I'm not giving anything away really. I'm kind of just tying into a reading of this film. But, you know, when Judy's out there and she's trying to get people to like get involved with her film, they're all sort of telling her the same thing. They're like, you want to make a movie about somebody who, you know, this young kid who grew up in the docks and in this area, and it's like very working class, but Judy has lived a very privileged life. She has her own house that was paid for by her family. She doesn't have a lot of life experiences in general because she's young and she never was in like extreme poverty, and yet she wants to make a movie about people outside of her experience. And you almost get the impression that she's like devoted to a man and she allows him to be in her life just so that she can get a taste of some sort of experience that will inform her art. And so as I describe that sounds pretty cool, right? That sounds like, wow, I want to see a movie like that. And I think that's what people really like about The Souvenir. I think people are watching this movie and they're getting that message and they're loving it because that's a cool message. I like the idea of like this connection between art and artists and like what lengths will you go to make your art better? It's something that, as much as I liked Velvet Buzzsaw, for example, didn't quite go all the way with it. It's something that I do think is pretty interesting in the perfection, which ultimately dovetails away from that idea. The Souvenir goes full tilt on it. But I didn't like this very much. I don't think it's bad. And I did like it. It's a B- for me. Almost a B. It's just very tedious to me to watch this film because it's really hard to watch this brilliant actress. And Anna Swinburne is a very brilliant actress. She does a lot of really good acting in here. The type of acting where she's making you empathize with her instantly, despite making every wrong decision on planet Earth. But that's really a problem with some of the writing. I think the semi-autobiographical nature is almost a hindrance here because you just get the sense that it's stranger than fiction. It's a sort of thing that does not make sense. And I understand that it's rooted in real life, but you're watching it and it's the equivalent of spending 2 hours with somebody telling me all about their bad relationship and me being like, just break up with the person. I don't want you to complain about it to me anymore. And I just feel like this movie is art being vented to me, the viewer. And some people like that. And maybe some people are getting that in their reading, but that's what this movie feels like to me. And I'm not into it. I don't like movies like this that just really go to these crazy extremes to highlight awful people in ways that I didn't care enough about this character. And it's weird because Swinton Byrne, she is so good in this and I do like her a lot, but it's just every scene where you see her inexplicably in love with somebody where there's no real chemistry to be had and he doesn't really do anything remarkable. Like you just never really understand what she really loves about this guy, which is why I think I'm bending over backwards to try to get it of like, well, she likes how dangerous he is, but he's not even like, he's not bad in a way where he's like, he's not like abusive or anything like, well, okay, I shouldn't say that because there are certain things he does here that are extremely abusive, but not like physically. He's not physically abusive, but he is the sort of character where he's quiet. And he's just very like methodical in how terrible he is. And he just takes advantage of her at every turn. And I don't like watching a movie where I like this woman and she's just getting taken advantage of over and over again and nothing really happens with it. And the way this movie ends, I obviously won't give it away. I just thought it was a really weird way to end it. I'm interested in a part 2 because I am curious about what's next for these characters, but I just walked away from The Souvenir more disgruntled than anything else. And it's a B-. It's not any lower than that because you can't deny the craft here. This is one of the better composed films of the year. A lot of scenes in here are just meticulously crafted, and it's the kind of movie where you could freeze frame so many moments and just gawk at what you're looking at. A lot of acting going on, not just with the actors, but I think Joanna Hogg has just a real eye for using environments to bring out what a character is thinking, what they're feeling in a raw way that actually informs the material. And a lot of that just works, but yeah, I think the writing here is where it sort of falls apart. Like the actual dialogue, the actual like plot of it is where things fall apart for me. I like the themes. I like the ideas. I like the way that the actors perform their lines. And I like the way that they're making the story come to life with their own charisma. But the plot itself is just, again, very tedious and needlessly so. I think that you can do the story really well. We've seen great movies where people we like are being taken advantage of, and it's sort of a thing where we watch them grow or we watch some sort of progression, and that's not really to be had here. So The Souvenir, it's an interesting movie. It's a movie where the title is very aptly named. It's based on a painting that comes up in the movie, and they use some music that centers around the idea of a souvenir, and it's thought-provoking for sure. But yeah, thought-provoking, not quite enough for me to like this one quite as much as other people. And I don't think a lot of people agree with me on this one. I'm seeing a lot of like best movie of the year. It's hitting the tops of many lists, but for me, it's nowhere close, unfortunately.
That's a shame to hear. I mean, that doesn't entirely damper my, I don't know if I want to say enthusiasm, but my interest in the film. I do plan to check it out at some point, and it might be another Vox Lux situation where I really dig it
true.
and you don't, based on what I'm hearing. But we'll see, I guess, whenever that chance will be, I get to see it, and who knows if it's really going to come out before August. I hope it's sooner than that, because that's quite a gap if it's true. And yeah, we'll see.
It's A24. It happens,
right.
Yeah. So, and I think it hits the UK in August, so maybe that has something to do with it.
But you said it goes full tilt, but does it go full Tilda Swinton?
So, all right, moving on. I think that I do think the chances are you are going to like this, Will, just because I think a lot of people do, and then just odds are a funny thing. It's 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, average rating 8.4. I mean, this movie's clearly striking a chord with people in a way that it just didn't for me. And who knows, maybe I'll like it better down the road. I tend to really like A24, and I tend to like very character-driven performances like this.
I was talking to a friend of the podcast, Corey Woodruff, and he had a chance to see the film as well, and he definitely had a similar assessment of the film, and that I think he appreciated it aesthetically more than he enjoyed the experience of watching it. So sounds like you're not entirely alone on this one.
Well, you know what? And that's funny because I did bring this up with Julia Tatey, who is also really looking forward to the film, because she noticed I tweeted about it, and she was sort of like, well, I'm kind of noticing a lot of the people who aren't liking the movie tend to be men. So that might be a part of it. It might be that sort of thing where watching this movie, I'm just not getting this experience, and that it might be a gender thing based on that. So that could definitely be a factor. Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to assume that only men are disliking it, because I mean.
Oh yes, of course. I know one prominent female critic who doesn't like it as well. So it's not an end all be all. It's not a guarantee, but it is something to consider. And I kind of buried this, but the real reason I want to see part 2 is because Robert Pattinson's going to be in it. So they had me at go. Yeah.
So that's going to be pretty interesting. I guess, is that filming now?
I don't know.
Or is that already in the can?
I think they just casted him, so they're probably still in pre-production, to be honest. Oh, are you talking about The Souvenir part 2?
Yeah.
Filming now? I don't know. I don't know if they've shot it yet. I wouldn't be surprised if they waited, though the movie was made so long ago.
I don't know, because isn't he doing the Nolan thing, and that seems to be pretty extensive for what I've been told. So if he's going to go from that to Batman, it seems like he's not going to have a lot of time in between.
Yeah. Well, I just looked at. Well, I mean, filming's probably not going to be longer than 6 weeks, but I just looked it up, and it started shooting literally 3 days ago. So yeah, they're just getting started.
Yeah, well, good for him. Keep him busy.
Yeah. All right, well, that'll do it for this week's episode of Cinemaholics. If you like our show, please consider leaving us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Stitcher. Next week, we are going to be talking about Men in Black International. That's hitting a nationwide release, along with Shaft. That's the latest Shaft movie. That's also going to be in theaters everywhere. Yeah. What?
No, just because that's a new Shaft. It's a new Shaft movie, as if they're not all just called Shaft. And just a ridiculous naming premise that there's 3 movies now called Shaft.
That's why I'm trying to be clear, because they're not just showing the old one again. They're showing the new Shaft. The new Shaft.
It's a new Shaft with the old Shaft.
There's a couple limited releases. The Dead Don't Die, the new Jim Jarmusch movie, zombie movie, that's going to be hitting a limited release, along with American Woman. I don't know too much about that, although I know Sienna Miller is the lead role.
Okay.
Yeah, so plenty of good things to look forward to. I definitely looking forward to to seeing Men in Black International. That really looks like it could go either way. I hope it's not super average. That's my big worry.
Well, I'm going to need your help because on Tuesday I have a screening for that and The Dead Don't Die, and I'm really conflicted as far as which one I'm going to see. Honestly, no, I am. I don't know which one I'm going to do.
I would see The Dead Don't Die and then just see Men in Black in theaters. Like,
well, that's the thing is, like, I feel like I'd probably be more. I don't know. I feel like I'd be more willing to pay money to support the new Jim Jarmusch movie because it's probably no matter what Men in Black, if it tanks or if it succeeds, I feel like that's probably going to ultimately end up making more money than a Jim Jarmusch movie would ever make. So
sure,
I don't know, especially a Jim Jarmusch zombie movie.
It's sounding like The Dead Don't Die is very. It doesn't sound like it's very good. So
it's mixed reviews, but I mean, I have no clue what Man in Black International is going to be. Could be a huge disaster. It could be a surprise hit of the summer.
That's true. All right. Well, thank you as always for listening. We'll see you all next week from the Internet California. I am John Agroni.
And from the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Wash.
See you next time.